Nobody can dispute the fact that music is all around us. Whether it's at a large social gathering, in your own living room, at a live performance, in the background of a movie, or practically anywhere else, it's not hard to come across. While many can certainly find music by seeking it out, 20th century composer John Cage argued that music is everywhere in a different sense. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary currently defines music as vocal, instrumental, or mechanical sounds having rhythm, melody, or harmony, and most people would agree. But Cage was different. Why? Because he had the ability to perceive musical qualities in any ordinary sound. He was not a musical savant, and he did not possess any sort of special oral skill. He was just able to open his mind. That's what his unorthodox style is all about. By the John Cage definition of music, anybody with the ability to hear will always be subject to the music and the sounds that surround them. This single idea would lead to the birth of a highly controversial yet highly innovative musical genre. John Cage, being a 20th century composer, was born in 1912 and died in 1992. However, he was not born a musician. Throughout his early life, music was only one of his many interests, along with art, architecture, and writing. He dabbled in all of these areas, but actually only went to university for writing. In the end, he found this education unsatisfactory and moved on. Cage only started to become serious about music when he sought out instruction from composer Arnold Schoenberg. Schoenberg would only agree to teach Cage for free if he were to dedicate his life to music, which marks the dawn of his real music career. Cage wasn't an avant-garde composer from the start. Schoenberg's music instruction could have set him on a path to be a fairly traditional composer, in fact, but Schoenberg quickly determined that Cage had no feeling for harmony and, therefore, could not compose music. Cage describes this in an interview in an American Masters documentary about him.
And Schoenberg thought that would make it impossible for me to write music. He said, "You'll come to a wall. You won't be able to get through." And so I said, I'll beat my head against that wall.
This metaphorical wall marks the infancy of his journey into experimental music. Some of Cage's most regarded ideas came from the most unexpected places, and we can see this even from the start. While working as an accompanist at a dance studio, he noticed through experimenting that sticking objects like screws through piano strings would give notes certain percussive sounds. He called this the prepared piano. This early technique would lead to a series of unusual compositions. However, the prepared piano was not nearly as unconventional of a method as what was to come in his career. Over time, he continued to branch out and experiment with many, many new techniques to create music of styles never seen before. For example, he tried using musical notation not in a traditional staff, but on a graph with one axis representing time and the other representing pitch. The fourth piece of his Imaginary Landscapes series was written not for a typical ensemble of musical instruments, but for 12 radios. So it's evident now that Cage explored the unknown and made use of many unconventional methods in his career, but that's not even the half of it. His most famous piece by far is possibly considered one of the most controversial compositions of all time. Ironically, it is titled not by its content, but by its length, 4 minutes and 33 seconds, or 4:33. But what exactly make these 4 minutes and 33 seconds so distinct in the musical world? And the answer is, well, nothing. No, literally, nothing. John Cage's 4:33 is fundamentally 4.5 minutes of silence. In a performance of the piece, musicians would sit as if to play the instrument and simply not play for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. This raises several questions for many people. Is this a joke? Can something like this even be considered music? What's the difference between the silence of 4:33 and any other silence we've experienced? But before any of that, we need to take a step back and ask ourselves the simple question of why did Cage specifically compose this? Composer and music professor Kyle Gann may have the answer.
And he was surrounded by people who were into avant-garde art. And I think in growing up in California, there was not nearly the kind of systematized classical music world that he might have had on the East Coast.
Cage is unique in many ways. Many agree that the average person wouldn't experiment so much so easily. However, even more important than how these works came to be is how we receive them. For better or worse, it's agreed that Cage has had a notable impact on music, and even on society in general. One of his pieces, titled ASLSP, or As Slow as Possible, has been being performed live on an autonomous organ in a German church for nearly 2 decades. If it continues, the piece will theoretically in total last 639 years. So yeah, that's a legacy, alright. Not only could his recognition live on far into the future, he has had significant influence on the musicians of today. His works have presented many new ideas to aspiring songwriters that have opened their mind to experimenting. As such, avant-garde music is much more present today, such as in the works of minimalist composer Philip Glass. In addition, even other highly noted composers agree that his music has had a positive impact on society. Musician Yoko Ono quotes in an article, "History of Western music can be divided into BC, before Cage, and AC, after Cage. I was a lucky girl to have bumped into him in my roller coaster life." From all of this, it's easy to determine that Cage's works were innovative and a clear triumph, but for most people, given the music alone, it's not nearly that simple. 433 was not initially received well by the general public. A great example of this is its initial 1952 performance by pianist David Tudor. Cage himself describes it as unsuccessful, noting that many people walked out in disgust even before the piece concluded. To quote him, "And in the third movement you heard only people who were indignant, and many of whom were walking out." It's not hard to see why 433 can be so confusing. Since most people have been conditioned to popular music with typical song structure, lyrics, length, melody, and harmony, calling 4.5 minutes of silence your own composition seems completely off the wall. In fact, music teacher and music education degree holder Ryan Sagady can relate to this.
I heard somebody play one of his pieces, 433, which is just 4 minutes and 33 seconds of complete silence, at a percussion ensemble concert, and I laughed through the entire thing. But I still had this, even though I thought it was funny, I had this respect for it, and I wanted to learn more about him.
It's not unreasonable that, to most, 433 seems like some sort of joke. However, calling Cage's music an outright tragedy is arguably taking it too far. Why? Because we're missing the point. One of Cage's main inspirations for 433 was his experience in an anechoic chamber at Harvard University. An anechoic chamber is a specially soundproofed room designed to be as quiet as possible. But when entering, Cage noticed that although the room was designed to be completely silent, he could still hear the sounds of his own body, like his blood flow. This caused him to realize that no matter how hard you try to immerse yourself in silence, there will always be sound that fills it. This also applies to 433. In a performance of it, it's not the silence that you hear, it's the background noise that fills it that creates the music. To quote Cage, "They missed the point. There's no such thing as silence. What they thought was silence, because they didn't know how to listen, was full of accidental sounds." John Cage is a masterful display of innovation in music. He shattered creative boundaries that were previously untouched, never hesitating to forge ahead into the unknown, and as a result, he showed people all over the world the true potential of pure sound. Some will argue that his works and accomplishments were tragic, having little meaning and spreading the supposedly dangerous idea of sound being music. However, any avant-garde composer can testify that they are not disgraces to creativity, but rather catalysts. He, in the 1900s, gave us piece after piece after piece that demonstrated just how differently music can be thought of, inspiring countless individuals to take up their own experimentations and explore their own new musical horizons. And that is truly a triumph in history.